Today in the bunker, we're going to build a water tank for our Bandit summer camp. One of the more iconic elements of the Emerald summer camp in the Chernobyl zone is the water tower or water tank, and I tried to kind of capture the essence of it. It's probably could have stood to be a little bit taller, but I think that works pretty well. So let's set about building this. The basic parts of this build are going to be this pill bottle, which I cut the neck off with a razor saw. You could use an X-Acto or whatever, just take your time and be careful. I'm going to use this cardboard tubing. This comes out of a package of aluminum foil or tin foil. So when you're done making hats or whatever, you can take the center tube out. It's much smaller than a typical paper towel or bog roll, toilet paper roll type cardboard tube. It's also thicker, so it works pretty well for this. We're going to cover that with some card just to cover up the spiral. There's always that telltale, hey, I used a big piece of cardboard thing. And then we'll just kind of hot glue. I took the lid, which was about the same diameter as that, and drew a circle and then cut it down a little bit and glued that to the top just with some PVA. I roughed it up and just glued it on there. And then we're just going to use hot glue to glue all this together. And this is some chipboard from the water plant project, the leftover, that I had treated with the sanding sealer. So this should not warp. And we'll get that all glued together with some hot glue. We're going to attach this card with some hot glue, and I've already laid a bead on there. I'm just laying a bead every so often and just carefully rolling this around, letting it firm up, and we'll get it all the way around to here, and then we'll cut it off and smooth it out. And we may have to put something over that seam, but that's fine. I just lay down a good bead of hot glue in there. And then just roll that like you're rolling sushi or something and let it set up well. And I rolled this around there just to kind of take some of the springiness out of it. And if it's not entirely perfectly even at the bottom, that's fine. We can clear that up when we put the basing on. So we will continue on. All right, so that's hot glued on. I probably could have gotten a little more under there and firmed that seam up. I'll put some PVA on there and kind of tack it down a little bit, but overall didn't come out too bad and fits just about perfect. Hot glue on top of that tube, and I set that so that the tube fit up against the top of this bottle, and that bonded pretty well. So now we'll do the same to the base. Put that roughly in the middle. Get those strings off. There we go. Alright, so, and that'll keep that from immediately tipping over. You really have to try to get it to tip. Alright, so we're going to put some PVA on here, and then we'll start with the basing once this sets up a little bit, and we'll be back. We just take some PVA and kind of spread that around. And a little bit of our basing sand, which you just use whatever kind of sand you have, and just do that all the way around. Excuse me, and then we'll get ready to prime it. There it is with the basing applied. So we're going to let that dry well, and our seam seems to have set up pretty good. So we'll get ready, once this is dry, then we'll give it a shot of primer and start putting on some grass and some paint and all kinds of good stuff. So after some application of some red primer, we are ready to paint. And note that the base, everything's dried, the sand has dried in place with the PVA, and it is not warped. So the sanding sealer does an excellent job. I can't recommend that enough. If you can find it and use it, then you save yourself a lot of headache. Alright, so we will get ready to paint this. First color we're going to use is some burnt umber. The actual tank itself is, or was, it's all burned up now, but the last good photos I have of it show it's very, very rusty. There's not very much paint left, so we're going to try and give it a very rusty undertone. And we'll start with the oldest rust, which will be our dark brown, and we'll just apply that. Actually, we're going to use a sponge. We'll kind of sponge that on. That'll give it a little bit of a texture too. Alright, so we're just going to do that whole thing overall, and we'll be back. And using the same sponge, we're going to add a little bit of nutmeg and go up a little bit. And same technique, we're just going to kind of randomly apply that and build up that texture. Just go a little lighter on this so that the darker bits will show through. Alright, so just do that all over. The water tower was originally white, so we're going to stipple on with a stippling brush some white paint. And if it's a little dirty looking, that's so much the better. And just kind of randomly apply that. You could also do it with a sponge. I may go to the sponge. It's probably a little easier for this application. But anyway, we want to just give it that kind of peeling paint look. The other advantage is that this bottle was white, and I actually rubbed the paint off in a couple of places, so once you're done with that, you won't even be able to see it. Alright, so we'll continue on with that. After sponging on the white, I went back and took some of the nutmeg and the burnt umber and just did streaks along there to try and sort of dirty that up a little bit. So kind of do it to taste. It didn't come out too bad, so we're going to go ahead and do the ground cover. We're just going to build up using a nutmeg, and then we'll use a country tan, and finally a maple sugar tan as a highlight, and then we'll add some static grass and some little tufts and things to it. So we'll get to that and be right back. Just kind of damp brushing those colors on just to build up that sort of depth. I'm not sure how well that translates on the camera, but anyway, we'll finish that up and be right back. The colors are applied on the ground cover. English is hard. I put down some PVA, and what I'm going to do is push some static grass onto that. I don't have a fancy applicator, so I just take some static grass and just kind of lay it on there and sort of push it down into that PVA. And then you just kind of knock the excess off onto a plate so you can reuse that. And we'll do the same thing with the little tufts. We'll just lay down some PVA and apply those where we need them. Alright, so we'll continue on. So it doesn't take much, just a little bit of grass and a few tufts, and you really make that base pop and kind of give that some life. You'll see there's some spots where the PVA is. Don't worry about that, it dries clear. So once that firms up a little bit, you won't even see it. Although be careful not to knock the tufts off like I'm doing here. But in any case, that's all it takes. So overall, not a bad build. That's going to look really good in the Bandit Summer Camp. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day.